Hi, I'm Andy Jones, Content Editor for Plaid's online education program, Let's Paint, and I'd like to welcome you to today's YouTube live stream. Today we're going to be talking about round brush techniques, and I'm going to show you how to do some good brush stroke work with a round brush. And I'm going to be using Folk Art multi-surface paint. So I'd like to let you know that we've got a great 12-piece kit that you can get on Walmart.com. It is promo 0830. It's a 12-piece set of the Folk Art multi-surface paint, and I want to let you know that it's the same great paint but with a great new label on it. So you can get this again at Walmart.com. So I'm going to use some Cardinal Red to start my exercise today with, and I'm just going to put a little bit out on my palette, and you can see just how creamy the Folk Art multi-surface paint is. And creamy paint is a beautiful thing, but it's not the best thing for stroke work. So what we're going to do is we're going to thin down our Cardinal Red using just a little bit of water. So I'm going to add some water and mix it in with my palette knife. And we want to make sure that our paint is a nice fluid consistency. We want the paint to have some body, but we also want it to be very fluid. So just add a little bit of water and mix it in thoroughly with your palette knife. And as soon as I get mine mixed to the proper consistency, I'll show you exactly what that looks like. So just add water incrementally and mix it in thoroughly with your palette knife. Having the paint the proper consistency is one of the keys to being able to do good stroke work with a round brush. All right, let's test this consistency and see if we are close to what it needs to be. So I'm going to push the paint into a pile and then scoop it up on my palette knife and see if it plops off. It plops off pretty well, but I think I want it just a little bit thinner, so I'm going to add just a little bit more water and mix that in. We really do want our paint to be the consistency of bird droppings, so when you scoop it up on your palette knife, it should just plop off, and that's the real consistency you're looking for. Now, keep in mind that acrylic paints dry by evaporation. So if you are in a rather warm climate or an arid climate, your paint is going to dry out quicker than if you're in a cool, humid climate. So just because I've mixed the paint to the proper consistency, and that's what it is right now, it's not going to stay that way for an entire painting session. So you may need to come back and thin your paint down from time to time as you are working. So keep that in mind. Your paint consistency can change over time. So the next important thing for doing good round brush stroke work.
We have a question coming in from Mary.
Okay.
She says, my favorite medium is watercolor. Could these techniques work with that too?
They can. The difference is watercolor is inherently very, very thin and transparent, and you would probably want to have your watercolor thicker than you would normally work with it in order to do this type of stroke work. But good brush control is important no matter what medium you are working with. All right, so paint consistency, number one thing that you have to get right for good stroke work. The next thing you need is a good quality round brush. There are all different kinds of qualities of brushes available in the market, so try to find a good quality brush that fits within your price point. So I'm going to dip my brush in water just to get the hairs all saturated, and then I'm going to blot the excess water on a paper towel. I like to use a blue shop towel. They seem to be a little bit more absorbent for me. So I'm just going to blot the excess water from my round brush, and then I'm going to pick up some paint. So I'm patting the brush flat down into my puddle of paint to fill the brush completely full of paint. All right, so my brush is very, very full of paint, and then I'm going to give you another pro tip here. So we're on, I guess, now we're on pro tip number 3, consistency, quality brush, and now blotting your brush where the ferrule and the hairs meet. The ferrule is the metal part of your paintbrush, and you want to blot right where the ferrule meets the bristles of the brush, so that if there's any excess moisture on the ferrule, you blot that away so that the water doesn't suddenly run from your ferrule down your bristles and make a mess on your painting surface. All right, so we are going to begin today's little lesson doing what we call a comma stroke. And so I think, Jake, on the table behind you, there's a roll of blue painter's tape. If you can hand me that. Thank you so much. We are indeed as live can be here. All right, so I'm going to put a flag on the handle of my brush because I want to really make sure that you understand how I'm doing these brush strokes. All right, so there's a flag. So if I move the brush in my hand, you can easily see the flag moving and turning. Okay, so I'm loading up my brush, and I'm going to set my brush at a 45-degree angle, and I'm going to start here, and I'm going to end here. All right, so I'm just putting these little marks just so that you all can see where I'm going to start and stop. And let me kind of move this flag a little bit. All right, so there you can see my flag, and you can see if I turn my brush in my hand at all, you'll see the flag move. I do not turn the brush in my hand, so the flag is not going to move while I'm painting. And of course I've got a blue shirt on and blue tape here, so there you can see it pretty well. All right, so I'm going to touch my brush to the surface. I'm going to apply pressure. I'm going to spread those bristles out, and then I'm going to begin to lift and drag the brush back to a point. All right, so that gives me the comma shape, and the flag did not move. So let's do that again, and I will do this many times today, and I will not move my move the brush in my hand. So you're not going to see the flag moving. I don't need to twist the brush. It's just a matter of releasing pressure and pulling toward me. So touch the brush to the surface, apply pressure. That wasn't very pretty, so apply pressure, spread out the bristles, and then lift and drag back to a point. All right, let's do that again. So we're going to get into a rhythm here, and we're going to touch the brush to the surface, apply pressure, pull, lift, and drag to a point. Touch the brush to the surface, apply pressure, pull, lift, and drag to a point. And you're not twisting the brush to make it come back to a point. It does that because the brush will snap back to a point, and I can do it the opposite direction. So touch the brush to the surface, apply pressure to spread those bristles out, then lift and drag to a point. All right, do we have any other questions?
No, just a comment from Mary saying, all right, thank you, and she agrees on the brush control.
Yes, I mean, it's like driving a car. You got to learn how to turn the steering wheel and how to apply pressure on the gas and the brakes, and the same thing with doing brush strokes. You have to learn how to apply pressure and maneuver the brush, and you have to be in full control of it. So again, touch the brush to the surface, apply pressure, pull, lift, and drag to a point. I want you to notice that I made a really big stroke. With the same size brush, I was making a medium-sized stroke. Now I'm going to try to make another stroke here, and I hope I have enough paint in my brush to do that because I just did a really big one, but we'll try to do another stroke here. Touch, press, lift, and drag to a point. And then we'll do a smaller one. Touch, press, lift, and drag to a point. Touch, press, lift, and drag to a point. So these are getting progressively smaller, and they're getting smaller because I'm using less pressure on the brush. So that's how you can create different size strokes. All right, so applying pressure really to spread out the bristles. So we're going to try this again. We're going to touch. We're going to really apply pressure. We're going to pull and lift and drag, 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 drag to a point. No turning and twisting of the brush. You're not seeing that flag moving around. This is what many people, when they're learning to do brush strokes, try to do. Okay, so they're going to put the brush down. They're going to try to twist the brush to a point. and you get something that's a little bit wiggly and a little bit raggedy, it's very hard for me to try to turn the brush while I'm making a stroke, because I know you don't need to do that at all. We're simply touching the brush down, applying pressure, pulling and lifting and dragging that to a point. You want a nicely rounded head and a nice graceful tail when you are doing these strokes. So this was probably with about a number 5 round. I've got a smaller round brush here, so we're going to try to do a couple of smaller strokes with this. And this is not my favorite brush to work with. I just was using my favorite, so we'll see what happens with a brush that's not my Old Faithful. But try to do some smaller strokes here. So touch, apply pressure, pull, lift, and drag to a point. Okay, it's not doing too bad today. Touch, press, lift, and drag to a point. Touch, tiny pressure, lift, and drag to a point. So practice has served me well that I was able to do some smaller brush strokes. Let me give you another pro tip. If you have trouble getting a nicely rounded head on your stroke, when you load your brush and you are ready to do a stroke, you can tip the end of the brush back into the puddle of paint, and it will put a little extra bead of paint right at the tip of your brush. And so now when you go to put that tip of the brush down, you're going to have extra paint there to spread that out, and we should get a nicely rounded head on our brush stroke. And then lift and pull and drag to a point. Being in control of your tools is essential in becoming a good painter. No matter what you're trying to do, if you can manipulate the tool to make it do what you want it to do, then you're in great shape. All right, let's talk about, let's put out a little bit of white on our palette, because I want to make a different color here, but I want it to be harmonious. So I'm going to take my palette knife and I'm going to add a little bit of my, I think this is cardinal red. Yes, a little cardinal red into my white to make a nice pink color. And I might add just a little bit more, because I want this to be able to show up pretty well on camera. All right, so you remember that we mixed our first color up using some water to get it to the right consistency, and I'm going to need to do that with this new pink mixture I've made.
It's a little like my breakfast yesterday. I had this I had a parfait from McDonald's.
Yes, I mean it's so fun to mix color, and you can relate it to all different sorts of things. So we're going to add some water to this to make sure that we've got a nice fluid consistency that's going to be good for brushstroke work. So again, mixing in some water, and you will over time learn exactly what the consistency should feel like, and you'll be able to do this very quickly. But it's important to take the time to really mix your paint up and then give it the plop test and make sure that it's plopping off just as it should. It shouldn't take any effort to get a glob of paint to plop off your brush. And now we're going to do what we're going to call a tipped stroke. Alright, so I'm going to load my brush with my cardinal red, and then I'm going to come to my shop towel and I'm going to wipe the paint off the tip. Just swirl the tip around a little bit to take some of the paint right off of the very tip, and now I'm going to stick the tip of the brush into this lighter pink paint, so that when I do a brush stroke, this pink color is going to drag through the darker red and should give me a very nice effect. So let's touch our brush to the surface, let's apply pressure, let's pull and lift and drag this to a point. So that was pretty light, a lot of pink on there, so I'm going to wipe my brush off. I'm going to pick up the red, the cardinal red again. I'm going to take a little bit less off this time, dip it into the pink, and then I'll do another stroke next to it. Touch, apply pressure, pull and lift and drag to a point. You can see you've got just a little bit of a difference there. Take this color off the brush every time so that we get a nice red in our brush. We'll take even less off this time. Tip it with a little less pink, because I want you to see what it looks like when you have more red than pink in your brush. And there we go with a much redder stroke. Alright, so I'm going to bring this up to our close-up camera. There you go. So you can see how you've got that streaked effect going on, and this is very, very effective to do for a little special effect when you are in fact doing some stroke work on a project. Now you can also, it just helps when you are practicing and playing, that you get to do some variations on your stroke work. Alright, let's talk about another way to do two colors on a brush, and this time I have a little filbert brush here which looks like a flat brush, except it doesn't have any corners on it. It's rounded. So that's what the shape of a filbert brush is. It's a flat brush that has a rounded head on it, and so I'm going to double load this filbert brush, which means I'm going to put one color on one half and another color on the other half of the brush. So to do that, I'm going to stroke half of the brush into the pink, and I'm going to move to a clean place on my palette and work that color in, and I'm going to, don't have a really good clean edge here, so I'm going to move some of my red over. Don't try to cut corners when you're doing this. Make sure if you need to move paint, you can move paint so that you've got a good spot to load your brush in. I'm just picking up paint on the brush, and then I'm going to begin to work the color into the brush on a clean spot on my palette. I don't need to make really long pulls here. Just want to work the color into the brush so that I get a beautiful gradient from red to pink, and then I'm going to put a little extra paint in the brush so that it is super full of paint that is the proper consistency. And I'm going to quickly put a little flag on this brush so that you can see, even though I'm using a different brush, I'm doing the same technique, and I'm not going to twist or turn my brush. Alright, so here we go. You can watch the flag to make sure that I don't turn it. Alright, so here we go. I'm going to set the brush down. I'm going to touch, apply pressure, lift, and drag to a point. And I get a beautifully graded stroke that's graded across. This has the color streaked from top to bottom through it. So let's do another comma stroke with our double loaded filbert brush. Alright, so we'll touch the brush down to the surface, we'll apply pressure, we'll begin to lift and drag our brush to a point. There you go. So you can see, and that stroke looks a little jiggy to me, so I'm going to try to do it with a little bit smoother motion. I'm just going to go right over that stroke a second time, and there it's much smoother. Alright, so you can go over a stroke if you have to. It's not advisable, but it happens from time to time. But let's do this same thing without the filbert brush. We're going to do it with our round brush. So I just rinsed my round brush out, blot the brush on my shop towel, and I'm going to load it the same way. I'm going to move some paint so that I've got a nice clean edge, and I'm going to move some of this so I've got a good clean edge to load against. And because I have a round brush, I'm going to have to do the work to spread the bristles out. So when I go to load the brush, I am working the bristles into the red, and then I'll flip the brush over and I'll work the bristles into the pink, hitting the brush so that the ferrule touches the palette every time. I really want to apply maximum pressure on the brush so that I spread those bristles out so that they can pick up paint and then pull the paint back into the brush. I will make a little loading zone here on the palette so that I can really watch what's happening on my brush, and I can pick up more of either color as I need it. but you really want to have your brush very, very full of paint. All right, let me know if we have any other questions, Jake.
Nope, it seems like they're explaining everything really well.
Okay. All right. Well, this is something that requires lots and lots of practice, but make practice fun and do some different things with it so that you're not just making stroke after stroke after stroke. All right. Let's try to do a double-loaded round brush stroke here on our practice surface. And you can see the flag, trying to make sure that it's very obvious, because not moving the brush in my fingers is incredibly important. So touch the brush down, apply pressure, pull, lift, and drag that back to a point. And there we have a beautifully graded stroke from red to pink, and that was done on a round brush. The important thing is you always have a clean edge to load the brush with, and your brush must be full of paint that is the proper consistency. That is key. All right, we'll do another stroke, go in the opposite direction. I'm going to touch, press, pull, lift, and drag to a point. And I will tell you, there's going to be one stroke direction that's much easier than the other, and that's just the way everybody is. Doesn't matter if you're right-handed or left-handed, everybody has a stroke direction that's easier than the other one. So we have covered regular single color brush strokes, we've done tipped strokes, we've done double-loaded strokes, we've done commas to the right and commas to the left. So lots of good exercise for you to practice and become very proficient with your round brush. Okay? So let me remind you the important things to remember when doing round brush strokes. Number 1, your paint must be the proper consistency. Number 2, you need an excellent round brush. And number 3, do not turn your brush in your fingers. So again, I was using Folk Art multi-surface paint today, and it is available in a great 12-piece set at walmart.com. This is the Folk Art multi-surface set promo 0830. So thanks for joining me today, and I hope that I will be seeing you practicing lots of round brush strokes.